Call whoever you want." The black woman gripped her phone tightly as the white officer laughed dismissively, his colleagues snickering behind him. Angela Harris, poised and composed despite the tension, lifted her chin and dialed with calm authority, her eyes locking with the officer's in a steady, unwavering gaze that challenged his assumptions. The sterile fluorescent lights of the precinct reflected off the polished tiles, bouncing against the badges and metal equipment around them. Every second stretched as the officer smirked, convinced that she was powerless, that her voice carried no weight in this room. Angela's fingers hovered for a moment, then pressed call, her voice soft but clear, carrying a confidence that belied her situation. James Whitman, mid-40s, white, authority etched into his posture, tilted his head, amused and dismissive, unaware of the revelation about to unfold. Papers rustled on the counter, radios buzzed faintly, and the hum of fluorescent lights added to the charged atmosphere, amplifying the quiet storm in the space between them. Angela spoke her first words, precise and deliberate, outlining her intention, each syllable defying the expectations imposed on her by color and circumstance. The room held its collective breath, officers shifting uneasily as their laughter faded into attentive curiosity, the shift imperceptible yet undeniable. Every detail of the scene, the gleaming phone, the slight tilt of her head, the crisp folds of her jacket, the officer's gradual narrowing of eyes, painted a cinematic moment of tension and emerging justice. Angela's calm presence and measured words created a quiet authority, the kind that commands attention without a raised voice, highlighting the disparity between perception and reality. James's initial amusement gave way to subtle recognition, a flicker of doubt crossing his features as he began to realize the truth hidden behind the unassuming figure in front of him. The interplay of light and shadow accentuated the intensity of the confrontation, every reflection on the polished surfaces capturing the growing imbalance of power, the authority shifting silently from the one who underestimated to the one quietly in control. Angela remained composed, her breathing steady, posture impeccable, eyes unyielding, as she continued the call, revealing the depth of her influence and the significance of the connection she held, rendering the officer momentarily speechless. The scene closed on the tense tableau of gazes, subtle movements, and the charged silence, the beginning of a moral reckoning unfolding in real time, cinematic in its delivery, rich in detail, every element reinforcing the weight of integrity over bias and expectation. The morning after the tense call, Angela Harris walked through her modest apartment filled with soft sunlight streaming through the blinds, the city skyline visible in the distance. She moved with quiet purpose, adjusting her professional attire, a tailored blazer over a crisp blouse, her phone still in hand. On the kitchen counter, coffee steamed gently in a ceramic mug while papers and a laptop lay open, evidence of the planning and research she had done the night before. The hum of the refrigerator and distant city sounds created a subtle soundtrack to her focused routine. Angela's expression was calm but determined, her eyes reflecting both the intensity of the previous confrontation and the clarity of her mission for the day. She paused at the window, looking down at the busy street below, watching people navigate their routines, unaware of the momentous power dynamics that had unfolded hours earlier. Her fingers brushed over the phone screen, reviewing messages and contacts, each one a step in maintaining authority and control over her work despite the dismissive attitude she had faced. The light bounced off her glasses and the smooth surfaces of the apartment, highlighting the contrast between the soft domestic space and the sharp, competitive edge she carried into the outside world. Every motion, from the way she sipped her coffee to the careful arrangement of documents, reinforced her intelligence, poise, and readiness. In her mind, she replayed the brief exchange with the officer, noting every detail, every reaction, each one contributing to her understanding of how perception and respect intersect. As she prepared to step out, Angela adjusted her blazer one last time, her posture straight and commanding, the morning sun reflecting off the cityscape behind her, symbolizing both the continuity of everyday life and the subtle, ongoing assertion of her presence and authority in a world that had underestimated her. Marcus Reed navigated the bustling Chicago streets in his well-worn SUV, the afternoon sun casting long reflections on the glass buildings around him, his expression calm and contemplative as he reviewed notes on potential investments. Every detail of the city visible through the windshield reminding him of the balance between perception and reality. His hands steady on the wheel while his mind traced the events of the previous day, replaying the encounter with the dismissive officer. Recalling each subtle movement, tone, and gesture, analyzing the dynamics of respect, authority, and character, his focus unwavering. The traffic flowing around him, pedestrians crossing streets, the hum of the city blending with the faint sounds of his car, the environment ordinary yet layered with observation. The ordinary urban backdrop providing contrast to the extraordinary decisions he must make. Marcus glanced at his phone briefly, reviewing messages and contacts, weighing the influence and responsibility inherent in every call and note, appreciating the quiet authority that comes from patience and insight. The reflection of sunlight on the dashboard illuminating papers spread across the passenger seat, reinforcing the juxtaposition between his unassuming appearance and the substantial impact of his expertise, his eyes scanning the cityscape as he considered the next steps. The rhythm of his drive and the pulse of the city creating a cinematic atmosphere, the interplay of light, motion, and thought capturing the essence of a man whose power is measured not by spectacle, but by presence and understanding. Marcus continuing his journey through the urban landscape with quiet determination, each street and signal a reminder of the balance between humility, vigilance, and the subtle assertion of authority in a world that often overlooks the unseen. Later that afternoon, the atmosphere inside the downtown precinct felt noticeably different, although nobody openly acknowledged it. The fluorescent lights still cast pale reflections across the polished floors. Radios still crackled from distant desks, and officers still moved through their routines carrying reports and paperwork. Yet an undercurrent of tension lingered beneath the surface. Officer James Whitman sat behind his desk reviewing incident logs, but his concentration kept drifting. Every few minutes, his eyes shifted toward the entrance as if expecting something. The previous day's encounter refused to leave his mind. He remembered Angela Harris standing calmly in front of him while others laughed. He remembered her steady voice. Most of all, he remembered the confidence she carried when she placed that call. Across the city, Angela stepped out of a modern office building after a long meeting. The late afternoon sun reflected off the glass towers surrounding her, creating bright flashes of gold and silver across the sidewalks. She adjusted the strap of her bag and continued toward a nearby parking garage, her expression thoughtful but composed. Her phone vibrated once. A brief message appeared on the screen. She read it, paused for a moment, then continued walking. Meanwhile, inside the precinct, a black SUV rolled slowly into the visitor parking area. The vehicle was clean but unremarkable. No government markings. No flashing lights. No indication that anyone important had arrived. Several officers glanced through the windows before returning to their work. A few minutes later, a tall man entered the building carrying a slim leather folder beneath his arm. Marcus Reed moved through the lobby with quiet confidence. The desk sergeant greeted him politely and directed him toward a conference room. As Marcus walked past rows of desks, conversations gradually softened. Some officers recognized his name from recent discussions. Others recognized him from photographs attached to business publications and leadership conferences. James Whitman noticed him immediately. His posture stiffened. Marcus offered a polite nod before continuing toward the meeting room. The reaction from surrounding staff did not go unnoticed. Officers who rarely stood for visitors rose to greet him. Supervisors stepped out of offices to shake his hand. Administrative staff smiled warmly as he passed. James watched every interaction unfold. The contrast was impossible to ignore. The man moving through the precinct commanded respect without demanding it. There was no arrogance, no display of power, only quiet confidence and genuine courtesy. Moments later, Angela arrived and entered the same conference room. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows overlooking the city, illuminating the polished wood table at the center of the room. For a brief moment, Angela and Marcus exchanged a warm greeting before reviewing documents together. Through the partially open doorway, James caught sight of them speaking as equals. Not because of status, not because of influence, because of mutual respect. The The realization settled heavily in his mind. The assumptions he had made were beginning to unravel one by one. As the afternoon sunlight stretched across the conference room floor, the balance of power inside the building shifted in a way that could not be measured by rank, badges, or titles. And for the first time, James Whitman found himself questioning not who Angela Harris had called, but why he had never bothered to listen in the first place. By late afternoon, Angela Harris and Marcus Reed sat together in the quiet conference room, sunlight streaming through the tall windows, illuminating the polished wood table between them. Papers, notes, and devices were spread neatly across the surface, each representing hours of preparation and careful consideration. Angela's posture remained calm and authoritative, her fingers lightly touching the documents as she reviewed key points, while Marcus leaned slightly forward, listening intently, his expression composed but alert, reflecting both appreciation and respect for her poise. Outside, the city hummed with routine activity, cars passing on streets below, distant sirens faintly audible, yet inside the room, a sense of focus and gravity pervaded the space. The interplay of light on the polished surfaces created soft reflections that mirrored the careful balance of attention between them. Angela spoke first, her voice measured and clear, articulating details with confidence, demonstrating knowledge, professionalism, and insight that exceeded expectations, while Marcus responded with thoughtful nods, occasionally pointing to a section on the papers to highlight considerations that required adjustment or further review. The air carried a quiet tension, not of confrontation, but of concentrated engagement, the kind that occurs when two intelligent, determined individuals navigate important decisions together. Every gesture, every glance, reinforced the growing mutual respect and recognition of capability. Sunlight flickered across Angela's face as she paused, absorbing Marcus's input, reflecting on the shift from initial dismissal to acknowledgement of competence. Marcus's calm demeanor provided a counterpoint to the initial anxiety she had felt, signaling both authority and partnership without dominance. The meeting progressed with an organic rhythm, each detail and comment building toward clarity and resolution. By the time the shadows lengthened across the floor, both Angela and Marcus had established a shared understanding, decisions had been outlined, and strategies adjusted, the weight of prior tension replaced by a collaborative focus. The final moments in the room were quiet, almost ceremonial, as both collected their notes, adjusted their seating, and prepared to leave. The room itself bathed in soft light that emphasized the calm, yet profound shift in dynamic, capturing a transformative moment of recognition, respect, and the emergence of true professional authority. As evening settled over Chicago, the sky turned shades of amber and deep blue, casting long reflections across the glass buildings that lined the river. Angela Harris stepped out of the conference room carrying her folder against her side, moving through the quiet hallway with measured confidence. The conversations and decisions of the afternoon lingered in her mind, but there was something else now, something she had not expected when this entire situation began. Respect, not the kind demanded through position or authority, but the kind earned through character and consistency. Behind her, Marcus Reed paused near one of the large windows overlooking the city. He watched the fading sunlight dance across the water below, his expression thoughtful. For years, he had learned that the most revealing moments in life were rarely the loudest ones. They happened in silence, after assumptions collapsed and truth finally had room to breathe. Downstairs in the precinct, Officer James Whitman sat alone at his desk long after many of his co-workers had left for the day. The fluorescent lights seemed harsher now, the room quieter than usual. A report remained open in front of him, but he had not turned the page in nearly 10 minutes. His thoughts kept returning to Angela. He remembered the certainty with which he had judged her. He remembered the laughter, the dismissive remarks, the confidence that he already knew everything he needed to know about her before she had even finished speaking. The memory sat heavily on his conscience. Across the room, a younger officer walked past carrying a stack of files. James watched him stop and politely help an elderly visitor find the correct office. The simple act lasted less than a minute, yet something about it struck him. Respect did not require effort. It required intention. Outside, the city lights gradually illuminated the streets below. Angela crossed a pedestrian bridge spanning the river, the cool evening air brushing gently against her face. She slowed for a moment, looking out across the skyline. Cars moved below like streams of light. Boats drifted quietly through the water. The city continued exactly as it always had. Yet she felt different. Not because someone important had answered her call. Not because people had finally recognized her value. But because she had never allowed someone else's assumptions to define her worth in the first place. Her phone vibrated softly. A brief message appeared from Marcus. It contained only one sentence. "Thank you for standing your ground." Angela smiled faintly and slipped the phone back into her pocket. Several miles away, James finally stood from his desk and walked toward the large front windows of the precinct. The city stretched before him beneath the evening sky. For the first time, he was not thinking about procedures, reports, or authority. He was thinking about responsibility. The responsibility that comes with every first impression, every assumption, every decision. As darkness settled across Chicago, three people stood in different corners of the city, connected by a single moment that had changed each of them in a different way. And in the quiet reflection of the evening lights, the first real lesson had finally begun. The following morning began with a cold wind sweeping through downtown Chicago, rattling loose leaves along the sidewalks as the city settled into another busy day. Inside the precinct, officers moved through their routines, answering calls, reviewing reports, and preparing for meetings. Yet there was one conversation that seemed to follow James Whitman wherever he went. It appeared in fragments. A comment from a supervisor, a passing remark from a colleague, a mention of Marcus Reed's visit. Each reminder pulled him back to that moment when Angela Harris stood calmly in front of him while he dismissed her without knowing who she was or what she represented. Near noon, the precinct commander called an administrative meeting. Officers gathered inside a briefing room lined with maps, schedules, and department notices. James took a seat near the back, expecting another routine discussion. Instead, the commander stepped forward carrying a folder and a small stack of documents. His expression was unusually serious. The room grew quiet. "Before we begin," the commander said, "there is something important we need to discuss regarding professional conduct and community engagement." Several officers exchanged curious glances. The commander opened the folder. "Yesterday, we hosted visitors who are helping fund a major public safety initiative for the city." James immediately felt his attention sharpen. The commander continued. "One of those individuals was Marcus Reed." A photograph appeared on the presentation screen. Marcus stood beside city officials, nonprofit leaders, and senior law enforcement executives. The room became noticeably quieter. "Mr. Reed's organization has supported youth programs, officer training initiatives, scholarship funds, and community outreach projects across the state." Another image appeared, then another. Each revealed a broader picture of Marcus's influence and reputation. James stared at the screen. He had assumed Marcus was simply someone with connections. The reality was far larger. The commander paused briefly before continuing. The second individual involved was Angela Harris. Her photograph appeared beside Marcus's. Unlike the formal corporate images, this one showed Angela speaking at a community leadership event. The confidence in her expression was unmistakable. Ms. Harris serves on multiple advisory boards and has worked extensively with organizations focused on civic engagement and public accountability. James felt a knot tighten in his stomach. Around him, officers watched in silence. Nobody laughed. Nobody whispered. The commander closed the folder. "The lesson here is not about titles or influence. It is about respect. Every person who walks through our doors deserves to be treated with professionalism before we know anything else about them." The room remained silent for several seconds after he finished speaking. As officers filed out, James remained seated. Sunlight filtered through the narrow windows near the ceiling, casting long rectangles of light across the floor. For the first time, he understood the full scale of what he had missed. Angela had never needed someone powerful on the other end of the phone to deserve respect. She had deserved it the moment she walked into the room. The realization struck harder than any reprimand ever could. Across the city, Angela and Marcus met briefly at a community center preparing for an upcoming youth mentorship event. Children laughed in a nearby gymnasium while volunteers arranged tables and supplies. Angela smiled as she watched the activity. Marcus noticed the expression on her face. "What is it?" he asked. Angela looked around the room, filled with families, students, and community leaders. Then she answered quietly, "Sometimes the biggest victories happen when people finally see what was already there all along." Angela Harris stepped into the brightly lit conference room at Horizon Capital, her steps measured and confident, the sunlight streaming through the expansive windows casting reflections on the polished wood floor and glass walls. Her blazer crisp and neatly fitted, her expression composed yet alert, eyes scanning the room for cues. Marcus Reed already seated at the head of the table, reviewing documents with calm authority. The room quiet except for the soft hum of the air conditioning and the distant city noises filtering in from the street below. Angela took a deep breath and approached, placing her folder gently on the table before settling into a chair across from him. The faint glow from the afternoon sun illuminating their faces, highlighting the subtle shifts in expression. Marcus looked up and nodded, a small but meaningful acknowledgement of her presence and expertise as they began discussing the agenda. The dialogue measured, professional, and precise, each point addressed with clarity and focus. Angela articulating details of her call and contacts with calm authority, Marcus responding with thoughtful consideration and strategic insight, their mutual respect evident in every gesture, every glance. As papers were adjusted, notes referenced, and ideas exchanged, the atmosphere heavy with purpose, yet underscored by an underlying sense of partnership rather than confrontation. Reflections from the glass walls mirrored the gravity of the moment, sunlight catching the edges of documents and folders, casting warm highlights and cool shadows, the interplay of light emphasizing the concentration and sincerity of both individuals, each decision and discussion building toward clarity and resolution. A subtle tension replaced by a collaborative energy that marked the shift from previous misunderstandings to genuine recognition of competence and capability. As the afternoon progressed, the room remained calm yet charged, the air of professionalism and integrity enveloping the space, signaling a turning point in both perception and authority. And as the session neared conclusion, both Angela and Marcus collected their notes, exchanged a final nod of acknowledgement, and prepared to leave the room with the quiet satisfaction of having navigated the challenge with intelligence, poise, and mutual respect, the sunlight fading gradually, but leaving a lasting impression of a moment defined not by power alone, but by understanding, recognition, and the affirmation of value and dignity. 3 months later, the Chicago skyline glowed under the soft evening light, the river reflecting the warm hues of sunset. As Angela Harris walked along a pedestrian bridge, her steps calm and deliberate, the weight of past events evident only in the quiet confidence of her posture. Marcus Reed exited the Horizon Capital headquarters nearby, adjusting his jacket and pausing to observe the river, the city alive with lights and distant traffic hums. Yet both were enveloped in a sense of accomplishment and reflection. Inside her office, Angela glanced at a photograph from a recent community mentorship program. Students smiling and volunteers arranging tables. The energy of the event captured in mid-action, while a brief message from Marcus appeared on her phone. A simple note of acknowledgement that conveyed far more than words, confirming mutual respect and the completion of a lesson in understanding and dignity. Across the city, Officer James Whitman watched from the precinct windows, the streetlights illuminating his thoughtful expression. Considering the chain of events and the quiet authority Angela had displayed, the hum of the city providing a backdrop for introspection and the realization that assumptions based on appearance or status can obscure truth. The air held a stillness, the glow from buildings and the fading sun bathing streets and sidewalks in amber light, shadows stretching across facades, the reflections in office windows revealing silhouettes of people moving about their evening routines, oblivious to the profound transformations of perception and respect occurring within their midst. Angela paused on the bridge, looking down at the gentle flow of the river, the water catching fragments of the skyline, the memory of the initial encounter with disbelief and laughter fading into the backdrop of the city as she breathed in the cool air, the wind gently tugging at her hair and coat, the moment solidifying a quiet victory of poise, integrity, and moral clarity. Marcus adjusted his briefcase as he walked toward his vehicle, the lights of the city reflecting off its polished surfaces, the rhythmic sound of tires against pavement marking the steady progress of movement and the continuation of influence and responsibility, his gaze occasionally lifting to observe pedestrians and cyclists navigating their routines. The human element interwoven with the structures of authority and power. As night deepened, Angela and Marcus separately reflected on the arc of events. Their thoughts aligned in the understanding that real strength comes from patience, character, and the courage to act with dignity, and the city around them continued its steady pulse, a silent witness to the lessons learned, the respect earned, and the enduring reminder that integrity can transform perception, influence decisions, and leave a lasting imprint far beyond any single encounter.